YouTube brothers. We've got a box right here. We're gonna open it, and we are excited to bring this. This is a first for us on Brian Phillips RC. We have never done this particular plane, and I'm super excited. And yes, I think we'll do some bigger sizes of it too, but just, oh yeah, it is a zero. What? Look at that, 800 millimeter by FMS. Looks amazing. Can't wait to get this thing going. This is a plug and play, and I am super excited for this one because these smaller airplanes are a perfect Christmas idea. And by the way, you can still get things from FMS quick before Christmas, provided we release this video before Christmas, which is always up to Mother Nature, if you want to call her that, because the thing is, it's been really bad. Show them the windsock and the snow. It is literally snowing. It feels like we're in a snow globe right now because the wind is blowing in every direction. Yep. And it has been turbulent as heck and really no good. And yes, that has held us up on video production. So thank God we had some stuff that we filmed a while back. But anyway, guys, look at this. FMS, 800 millimeter zero. This thing is 750 millimeters, so also known as 750 millimeters. So, you know, Chinese advertising. Overall length is 570. Boy, that's strange. Why don't they just call it a 750 millimeter? I don't understand that. Anyway, the flying weight's 460 grams. Motor size is 3015, which is a 1550 kV. So if you guys are looking at that, by the way, if you didn't understand what that means, it means 30 millimeters by 15 millimeters. So 30 millimeters round, 15 millimeters deep. And then it's going to be a 1550 rotations per volt. Okay, so 1550 times, in this case, what does it fly on? Looks like they want a 2S 1300 milliamp. That's a little strange. Wow. So prop size is only 8.5 by 6, but it's a 3-bladed prop. So super exciting. 20 amp ESC and 4 9-gram servos. Now, just to be clear, this does have fixed landing gear, not retracts. I was thinking about the retracts as I was looking at this image because it looks absolutely gorgeous. It does. But the thing is, with retracts, you do take up extra channels. So just keep in mind that 4 channels is usually, oh, I just broke the edge of this box.
Off the foam.
4 channels is pretty low in the air side of things. So if you're getting a receiver and you want a 4-channel receiver, sometimes you end up finding yourself getting a 6-channel receiver, and it just kind of depends on if you need a reflex or if you come with a reflex or not. In our case, it does not look like this comes with a reflex.
It doesn't
so we're gonna have to provide our own Safe Select and AS3X if you wanna make this have auto leveling and all that good stuff. So we'll just lay this off to the side. Looks pretty much like what we're used to from FMS. It's a small package, nice and rigid packaging as usual. We're gonna cut the tape. Here on Brian Phillips RC, if you want to support us, just buy these things from the links. If you hate the one we're reviewing, we've literally reviewed thousands of different, well, maybe not thousands, but hundreds of different items. For sure. Thousands of videos. That looks sweet. And I love that on the landing gear, they detailed in moldings for the landing gear. That looks so cool.
Nice.
Then, of course, we have ailerons. We have to put the control horns in. Ew. Oh, don't like that at all.
Of course.
And then it looks like we've got aileron 1, aileron 2, which is good. So if we do in a 6-channel receiver, we could set up flaperons, which would be nice. But there again, on these smaller wings, if you want to set up an inboard flap, you can usually get away with it. And what I'm going to show you is just the twist, anti-twist, and then anti-movement there. It feels like we have a pretty good amount of support underneath the foam. Some of these foam planes, especially with the opaque paint, you can't see through them very well. And so it's hard to see where the wing spars are. But if you look on the underside of a wing, there's usually a release all the way down the length, and I don't see anything here. So they must have that thing right in the center, which is really cool. And then a snap to actually hold the landing gear in, which is what we saw on the T28 in the same size class.
Oh, that's right.
So it's kind of a unique design in that you have no tools necessary. And I do like that, that's very cool. So just keep in mind, as you're building these smaller planes, you might think, hey, I'm a beginner. I want to get something that's cheap because I'm not sure I'm going to like it. Oh, very cool drop tank. I'm going to give you some advice right now that you're not going to want to hear. Don't buy the cheapest one. Buy something that's going to be as close to ready to fly as you can get. Yeah. You will thank me later because it's going to help you find success at the beginning. And that being said, as soon as you know you're an addict, then you can just start following along, get yourself an NX8 or an NX10 or something like that. Good instructions, camera crew, if you could just read that for me.
Yep, perfect appearance, excellent performance.
Such a cheater. Okay. Oh no, we have a broken piece. This is the first time that's ever happened.
Wait, where?
On an FMS, on a tail.
Oh.
Look at that. What a mess. It's actually broken.
It's actually broken.
I have never had a broken part from FMS. Oh, except for there was that tail linkage the other day.
Oh, yeah.
In the
Except
J11. Except it wasn't broken. It was just like a manufacturing defect. That is a huge nut and bolt sack.
Oh,
Camera crew's not happy about that, especially not today.
That's not good today.
Okay, we got landing gear popping out. We got stuff flying all over the place. Looks like pretty nice landing gear. I like this style.
Yeah.
It's a very detailed, very small screws there. Those details are the first things to break off, by the way. And then just absolutely rock hard tires. That is definitely going to be crappy. But anyway, it is fine. It is what it is. They do look really nice and scale, so that's definitely something we like. And getting back to my arguments for a beginner pilot, you might think, hey, cheap is what I need. Cheap is what I can afford. Cheap is what I want to start with. Don't do that to yourself. You'll probably be a one and done. One and done's meaning that you get your first plane, you fly it, crash it, and then you have completed the hobby experience. If you come and follow Brian Phillips RC, you're going to understand, hey, there's the tip. I found it.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay. So we can at least glue it back on.
So we can fix it. So if you guys ever have this unfortunate incident happen, which to be honest with you, I mean, I got to be honest, we have never had anything broken like that from FMS yet. We have had things like this broken, but it's extremely rare. And I think we had one from Horizon that way. It was like a timber, maybe that was broken. I'm just going to use this glue. It's called mucilage. Okay. Mucilage is actually a generic term for glue, but this is like what we call China glue. China. Okay. So we're just going to squeeze this extremely hard and we're going to hope it doesn't blow up. And you'll notice that it's not coming out and you're like, oh my goodness, Brian, that is ridiculous. And you're like, yeah, that's pretty much ridiculous. This is why we've gotten away from China glue. And by the way, if you weren't already aware, this glue was full. This glue was full when I started fixing the other J11 from the linkage. I used 3/4 of this tube on that one model. And we have a much superior choice, which is foam to foam, but as you can see, it's just almost gone. Yeah. And so I guess we're gonna use that right now. And yes, we are gonna have to glue this wing on. So if you don't have glue, you're gonna wanna make sure you get some. So I'm just gonna show you how easy it is to use this stuff. Okay, see how nice that is? It comes out, it's liquidy. And then that aluminized tube is about the worst part of it because it'll keep coming out after you're done squeezing, okay? Just hold that together and then you'll see we've spread that glue on both sides. You see how it starts making those little stringy things? Now you can literally just wait and you don't have to do anything. Just let the air activate with the glue. Come over here, camera crew. Let's smell it. Let's show the people smelling it. You didn't show the people smelling it. So what you don't want to necessarily smell it, but you can smell the reaction. Smell that it's working. Okay. So the reason I say that, you don't want to sit there and sniff glue or anything. I'm just saying. But what you do want to do is you want to make sure the reaction is taking place. And so I call that cooking off. I actually learned that from a YouTuber. It might have been the Hands that taught me that. It's another RC guy. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? So anyway, so once that's cooked off a little bit, then you just stick it in there and it will be almost as though it was never damaged. Now, this one is showing its damage a little bit more than I like, but as you can see, it's getting very sturdy. And it's almost like when you lick an envelope and that contact cement sort of texture, it just holds. And you're more likely to rip the paper than you are to actually open that seam again. So this will be quite strong. Now, another tip, and this is something that I mention a lot, is when you get into a crash, by the way, we're gonna work this joint. This is just what we call a compressed pinch hinge or a pinch hinge. And what they do is they compress this little triangular portion of foam, and then that takes a little bit of the material and it allows it to pivot easily. Okay, so up and down. So you heard that crispiness, that's the glue and the more the paint breaking at the joint. So if you ever have this type of thing happen and you want to reinforce that, or you're like really in a hurry to fly, just answered this morning on comments. I was doing comments. And I said, what you can do is you can take and reinforce that with a toothpick. Now this is a super small and superficial thing, so I would definitely not waste your time on it. Just live with it, it's not that big a deal. And then that green, which is gonna be nearly impossible to match. If you wanna match this exact color, you can either take this down to the hobby shop and you can mix up a million testers paint and then go ahead and get the wrong one 3 times, because that's what you're gonna do. Get what you think it's not, get what you think it is, and then if you've got a really nice hobby shop, you can open the lid and look, but you know, they're not gonna let you do that. So what you can do is take this over to Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards or whatever you've got for a hobby not hobby, but home improvement stores, and they will match this color exactly, but it's a latex base, and that's actually perfect for this type of paint, but it's heavy. So you're not gonna repaint a whole plane that way, you'll just touch up your finishes. Now that's if you're super anal retentive and you don't have 400 planes in your basement, because if we had 400 planes worth of touch-up paint, we literally would not fit in this house.
Nope.
Okay, so as you can see, it's fixed enough. All right, so now we're getting to the fuse. This is an unbox after all, and snuck into the unbox, there is a build and radio setup. That's what we do on Brian Phillips RC. We take these beautiful things out of the box, we put them together, we fly them, we show you what's good and bad about them. And by the way, there are some times that you get planes and you're like, that looks like it's gonna be amazing, and then it just sucks. And we are here to help you sort through the plethora of millions of choices that you can buy online. Of course, there's tons of stuff, tons of crap that comes out of China. And the thing is, some of this stuff is very good and some of it's very bad. That's a Predator ESC. Looks like a nice ESC, a lot of heat sink to it. And I love that it's way forward, which is nice. It'll help with our center of gravity. Of course, we have the safety first label and then JST connector, which again is also going to be a little bit difficult because we don't have a ton of 2S batteries in that size class. So we're gonna have to keep and be creative on how we're gonna handle this. 1300 milliamp 2S. Don't we have one 1300 2S? I think we do.
What did the T28 fly?
We have this one and we have this one. Oh, buddy. We do have a 1300 milliamp. This is a Venom. This one here comes from Hobby Zone. So we'll go ahead and show that.
Adapter?
Do I? Oh yeah, I could make an adapter if I don't.
Well, no, you could make one.
So here's the thing, guys. Look at this. These things come with little adapters from Venom, usually. And so you can actually just plug that in, or you can build a little something like this. This is an EC3, and that's an XT60. So of course I've got the plethora of millions of different types of adapters. Let's show them on this charger. You may notice some occasional carpet that's coming from our new little atrium space. So this is the S155, which I would recommend. Of course, that's from Horizon. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna plug this in and charge it right now as we work. So I'm gonna plug that in. It's gonna show us some data, 8.3 volts. Then we wanna get this keyed in here correctly and then plug it in. Now that's gonna charge up to 4S, this is 2S. And you can see the voltages of the cells. It looks like it's not in bad shape already. And then it's already at 0.8 amps. So I'm gonna just click that and then scroll up to 1.3, which would be a 1C charge rate, meaning it's charging at the regular 1 times discharge rate of 1300 milliamps. Okay, cool, so that battery's getting ready. We're gonna get this plane built. And I'm gonna show you the whole process here on Brian Phillips RC. If you like the content and you wanna follow along and buy your own planes, that's exactly what most people do. So, check the links in the video description below. That looks like we got everything. So we got the manual, we got the planes. Not a very big piece count, but there is a lot in the nut and bolt sack, which makes me a little bit nervous because we're in a bit of a tight spot because we have some Christmas plans tonight. Okay, cool. So let's get right down to it, guys. So first thing we do is we look inside the nut and bolt sack, see what we got to deal with. They have stapled our Ziploc shut. And that is a manufacturing technique that's used all across the different spectrum of manufacturers to keep all the crap inside the bag while it's being shipped all over the planet, okay? So what do we have here? We've got what looks like some sort of a, I don't know, and then we've got another one of those, whatever the sort of thing is. Oh, you know what I bet that does? I bet that is like a simulated gun or something, but I don't know where it goes. So we'll come back to that. Now this here is gonna stick into the wing because it looks like that is over here. Now, I don't know if that's an antenna or a gun, but I think it sticks in over here because you can see it on the box. And it looks like we're gonna stick it in right about here. So hopefully the instructions will show us what that does. Then we have a Y cable. So this Y cable is going to allow us to join our aileron connections together here, which is gonna go back to our receiver. Now in our case, flaperons are going to allow us to activate these down like that together or up together, and then also opposite directions, because we're gonna treat each of these like an individual channel. Now that's gonna mean that we need 2 channels, so 1 channel, 2 channels, 3 channels for the rudder, 4 channels for the elevator, and then the 5th channel being throttle, the 6th of which will be a mode control. In our case, we're gonna be using an AR631, I believe, and the 631 is gonna give us AS3X and safe, if we'd like it, along with the flaperons. But we can use channel 7 and channels 8 on a 631. So you technically have an 8-channel receiver with only 6 pluggable channels, and you're paying for it. So just Keep that in mind, guys. Don't buy the cheap plane because you want a cheaper plane. Don't buy the small plane because you think it's cheaper. Sometimes you have to put more receiver in it, and the difference between a smaller plane, like an 800 millimeter, or in this case, actually 750 millimeters, and like the 1300 or the 1700 millimeter or the 1400 millimeter, may only be like $100 or $50 or $40 by the time you buy the different necessary equipment. So keep that in mind as a newbie. You're gonna get tricked, and we're here to help you not get tricked. We don't talk a lot about pricing here just because pricing does change so much, full disclosure. Okay, cool, and then we've got these little linkages. Those are gonna go on the wings, should be pretty easy. And then these are the rest of the screws to assemble everything. So we definitely do need to glue today. Now, if you have mucilage and you're in the unfortunate condition that you can't get the glue to come out of the bottle, there is a way to fix that. And the way I have fixed it in the past is just a super phenomenal way of doing it. What you're gonna do is you're gonna get some hot water. And in my case, our hot water comes out at about 6,000 degrees because that's just almost, it's about half what my wife needs for a shower.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put this in the microwave. Yes, it sounds like I'm in the same room, but I'm not. I use the only button I know how to use, evidently, according to my wife, which is the 1 minute button.
And you can only push it 12 times.
I pushed it 4 times.
So
when that's done,
when it's
I'm
lava.
gonna take this tube and I'm gonna stick it into the water and it's gonna warm up the glue while we get ready. So that's what we're gonna do. Or you could just buy this better stuff, which is significantly more. This tube here probably only costs $6 or $7. And this tube here, which is considerably smaller, probably costs, what'd you say, about twice as much?
Probably.
Like $12?
But
you waste so
like
much
half of
time
that.
and frustration with this. Plus, this is thicker and more mucusy, which some people are into that. So it's just, this is a little bit thinner and it does take a little longer to tack up. So this is great for on-the-spot repairs. This is better for assemblies because you can get a tighter fit. But you have to be careful because this stuff will tack up like crazy. This stuff is more tacky by nature out of the tube. Again, and you're also dealing with Hobby King, which is like, roll the dice, roll the dice. So, and I'm talking brand new tubes that haven't been opened them, they're dry. So
garbage.
anyway, just keep that in mind when you're ordering. Don't order 7 tubes like I do.
Wait, can I show them our snow globe now?
Yes, show them the snow globe, but the back is better. The front is cooler.
The front is cooler?
I think so, the backdrop is better. So the snow globe has been a big problem for us this last week.
It has.
We've been trying to fly a number of different planes and we have been successful only once. And I'm gonna go and get our water.
And that was only like moderately successful because we just
tried
to do it.
We just kind of made it work, right?
Yeah, it's been terrible.
Okay, so I'm gonna just bring this out now. There is a danger of microwaving water, and I wanna talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
Since we're making a suggestion of doing something that could be unsafe. It can flash boil, so if you don't disrupt the water, it may not boil. So it's just a chemical reaction. Based on the surface tension of the water, it may not actually boil until it's well beyond the boiling point. But if you introduce any bubbles, then it will flash boil.
As soon as it gets jostled. Yeah.
In your face, and then you like look like some sort of a chemical burn victim for the rest of your life. If you're into that sort of thing, go for it. Otherwise, just be real careful. Now, there's 2 leads here, okay? I want to pass them into the fuse. That'll be our next step, okay? So you're like, Brian, why aren't you looking at the instructions? Yeah, I don't need no stinking instructions. I will actually, but just not right now. So I'm gonna pass that through, and then this wing has to go forward, and it locks in and it keys in. But then this piece of foam is holding me back from getting it all the way down. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just walk this in here by pushing forward and bending the fuse. Show them what I did. With my middle finger, I'm bending the fuse. I'm holding it against my belly, I'm bending the fuse. You see that?
Yeah.
And then it just opens right up and you
That's
stick it in the
scary.
hole. It was a little bit scary, but that is a sweet look, by the way.
It is.
For being a small plane. And by the way, wowzers. Well, that'll make our transportation needs very convenient. Okay, so we gotta figure out what screws. 1, 2. Looks like 2 screws hold the wing on.
Okay.
And then there's gonna be a ton of little screws to hold those together. And then of course we have the horizontal stabilizer, which does need to be glued. So I think it would be wise for us. Now there is no wing joiner that I can see here.
Oh, no, that's true.
That is kind of weird though. Look.
Is there
see
a
this?
hole for one?
Yeah, kinda. Kinda looks like maybe I missed something. Did I miss something? Let's look at the instructions. That'd be a great idea.
That's true.
We can look at the instructions. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna look over here. I don't see a wing joiner in that, but they're kind of already put together. Ooh, what's that in the middle? What's that? What's that? Do they show?
Making sure the notches are on the right side facing up. I don't think so.
We looked through the manual, we couldn't find anything. So at this point, I'm confident enough to dig into the super, super hot water and glue. So first step we're gonna do is you could either install your control horns now. You see that part that was broken there, that little piece? So as you can see, it's gonna hold, you'll never have a problem with that, but it is unfortunate. So a little bit of paint off of there is kind of annoying, but I'm not gonna die over that. So these two need to go together like this, but they need to pass into the fuse as we're attaching them, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drag this over here. I got my Camera Cruise flower vase so that I can put my screwdrivers in it there. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and just dry fit it first. And I'm gonna actually press this glue down in so it can get really submerged nicely. Okay, so we'll just kind of slide this through and just make sure we have a good dry fit. Now this is another place where you might decide it would be helpful, beneficial to pin it with a toothpick if you're in a hurry to fly, okay? So obviously we're not in a hurry to fly because the weather is just frightful out there. Okay, so we're gonna pull those out. Now if you put glue on this surface, it's gonna wanna squeeze out and get everywhere. So my recommendation, and it is not always possible to do this, but in our case, what I'm gonna do is I just show you how well this works, okay? So now that this has been warmed up, watch how much easier this comes out. It's gonna be like butter, except not. See, it's still pretty hard. But you see, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push this up to the top and I'm gonna roll this bottle, okay? Then once I roll the bottle, then I can hold it like a syringe and then I can squeeze and then hopefully it doesn't blow up in my hand. Although it might, because look how hard I'm squishing that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna take a toothpick and just make sure we don't have an obstruction. Toothpicks are gonna be a big part of your assembly process if you're following along, or repair process. So make sure you always have a lot of toothpicks. I have boxes of these things. There's 3 in here right now though. So I just wanna make sure we don't have, if we have an obstruction, it should come out pretty easy after we get the obstruction clear. It would be unusual for that to be the case though. See how hard it's coming out? This stuff is just really, sometimes it's just really hard to get out. And you see how hard I'm squishing? Mm-hmm. It's almost like it's not there. So this one might be spent, but the buoyancy should keep it right at the tip there. Okay, so that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and put this onto the wing surface anyway, because that stuff is ultra super tacky, which is really good. And it is a trade-off because it is really tacky, but then it's also really tacky, makes it really hard to use when it's mostly empty like that. Now you could also use CA. I think they kind of show CA in this drawing here. But the thing is, I don't like CA for this. See how easy that is when it comes out? It's just there. And there's like no problem. You just put it on, okay? I just don't have very much of it, so I don't wanna run out. I'm gonna use the same thing that we used earlier and just spread it across the surface. And at the end of the day, your objective is to coat the surface, not to necessarily create some sort of a weird, you know, deep reaching grip. You just want like a surface contact, because this is called contact adhesive and that's the way it works. 2 surfaces, and if you can see, it's kind of balling up on the tip. Okay, so once that's done, you can let that, you know, sit for literally a minute or 2. And then I would normally take and spread whatever I think I can get away with in here on the surface above and below. It's a lot harder to keep it from getting on the outside if you glue onto the surface here. It's gonna be tempting to do that. I would not recommend it though. Okay, so just squeeze a liberal amount in there, as you can see right there, and then I'm just gonna spread that around. Now keep in mind, if you let this set up too much, you won't be able to get the parts in there, or if you press them in, you'll be pressing so dang hard that you'll actually have problems getting it in there. So just be mindful that you don't, it's always a balancing act. Okay, I'm just gonna put this useless thing out of the way for now. And I'm gonna go just a little bit more, and then I'm gonna have to spread that onto the top of the wing. So again, glue is it's not something to be afraid of, but it is definitely a bit of a hassle because the glue has to, you know, stay in good enough shape to use. And as you know, we're building planes constantly. So I can only imagine for some of you, maybe you're not building planes quite as frequently. And what's gonna happen is your glue will go bad while you're between models. And that does happen. It is a real palpable issue. Okay, so if I were to stick these together, see what I'm talking about? It's already really strong, okay? So then I'm gonna go ahead and slide this wing in, and I'm gonna press on the fuse with the palm of my hand, and I'm gonna press here just to try to keep from breaking it. It's not super well supported inside internally with like a piece of carbon fiber, which is unusual. Usually there's something that joins the horizontal stabilizer, okay? So now you'll notice that that little part that broke off is actually pressed into the fuse, and then pay special attention that this gets pushed in. So if you take your elevators, pull them down, and then you can grab and kind of squeeze that together, that's gonna make contact area on the face of the wing inside. And at this point, I would be, you know, if it was built otherwise, I'd be willing to fly it right now, because that stuff is not coming apart. Not without ripping a bunch of other stuff off.
Right.
Okay, cool. So continuing on with the build, as you can see, we've got the basic shape of the plane now, which is really cool. And we're gonna help you right through the whole process. Now, safety first, put your prop on last, after you've done all the rest of the work, unless you have a considerable amount of skill and you're willing to take the risk. And I'm just gonna tell you that right now. I do not know how this thing comes off. Oh, you grab this and then you spin it. See, you hold that, brace it, and then this spins apart. That's pretty cool. It's got an integrated screw. Okay, so once I get this out, see? It's got a nut zert rather. And then this slides off, and then the prop goes on. That is fancy dance.
That's really simple.
Now, how do you know which way it goes? The way that it's printed with the paint, or painted, I should say, is the direction it goes. And then I'm just gonna spin this and see if there is a keyhole that it's supposed to drop into. I don't believe there is, but I don't wanna be wrong. See how I'm just rotating it? I don't feel like there's any spot that's better than another. Yeah, I don't see anything there, so we'll just put it together. Some of these older FMS models have worse instructions. This is one of them that has the older style instructions. So I must say, the black and white instructions leave a lot to be desired. Fortunately for you, you've got Brian Phillips RC, so you can watch me do it, and then you can learn everything you might want to avoid or figure out about a particular model before you buy it for yourself, or before you're building it or as you're building it. And so my suggestion is always preview the plane here if you're thinking about buying it, and also when you do buy it, follow the links, and then that will make us the small commissions to help fund our channel, and it also funds our family of 6, which is pretty cool. So thank you guys for that. It's been an amazing year on Brian Phillips RC. I want to thank you guys. Every time I think of it, I want to say it, but the reality is you guys have really been a big impact on our lives, and we appreciate you and your patronage on Brian Phillips RC, and also the PayPal and Patreons that support us on a regular basis. Thank you guys especially. But really, if you want to be the easiest way to support us is to just buy the stuff when you like it. Okay, I grabbed the wrong one. There's a right one and a wrong one, and it was pretty easy to tell. This is gonna go in like that, slide into the cavity, and then it's gonna pivot forward, and then this thing's gonna snap it in. And it's gonna interfere with the gear door a little bit, so I'm not sure if I'm maybe doing that wrong. But let me see if I can take that out. See how it kind of comes forward? Hard to showcase that because it's just a tight spot, guys. Okay, there we go. Feels like once you get it, it's gonna just go all at once. There it is. Okay, just kind of a weird setup. And then this goes in there, and it's got a little bit of springiness to it, being that this is a music wire with a chrome finish on it. So you could fly without landing gear too. And yes, if you're new, you won't necessarily break your prop when you land. It shouldn't be that big a deal. It will just kind of come to a stop. I know you won't believe me, but if you land it right, you can belly land a plane all day long. I'm a radio controlled airplane, not a real one, and not break your prop. So that is a conventional and normal thing to do, and you don't need to feel like you have to be especially good. It's just part of the status quo. Okay, push that down. And you can see it's just a little bit weird, but once you get it, it's there. That is sweet, actually. And I love the tail dragger. It's painted with the body color and very thin rubber. I love the size. I love the landing gear. They actually look amazing. So obviously gonna be flying this. I feel like a prop plane, even a Warbird looks okay with the gear down, whereas I feel like an EDF jet that has fixed gear shows just a little bit more ugly, in my opinion. Okay, and then the drop tank just slides on and off. That is super cool. I thought it was a bomb. Oh, no, it's just drop tank. Okay, so next step we have to do is, of course, build the control horns on here. As you can see, we also have an antenna here, it looks like, and I don't know where that one goes. I couldn't see it in the drawings.
Can you see it on the box?
Oh, yeah, it's on the antenna. It's on here.
Oh.
See? Yeah, that just goes in there. Now, I'm gonna do something and see if that actually stays. Oh my goodness, I just pushed it all the way through.
Oh.
Whoopsiekins. Well, I guess we're gonna be gluing that too. That was definitely my fault. Okay, so I'm gonna pull that out. As you can see, I just can't get it off my finger either. I'm gonna just use this glue because mucilage, actually, let's see if the mucilage, oh wow, look, the seam's about ready to bust.
Oh, good, that'll be fun.
That'll be fun. Let's use it.
Oh, good.
Let's see if it's warmed up enough.
How far back can I film from?
Oh, that is so annoying.
Oh, jeez.
I know, it's like, it's just, and you're like, just cut the tip, Brian. No, you can't just cut the tip. It's like frozen in the bottle. This is what happens. And it is really good and tacky though, which is why I kind of like this step because I only have to do it once and then it's done forever. I'm gonna put that back in there. Goodness. I love that it's buoyant, so it's like perfect spot. Okay, so now I'm gonna just take this and you're like, but I thought you just said you didn't wanna like put it on the outside because it'll like smear out. Yes, that's true, I did. But what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna take a little bit of that and put it on the bottom too, so that it'll hold when I stick this back down there on the bottom, okay? And that is super, super, super tacky stuff, guys. Oh, I got it backward. Got to get it the right way. So if you guys aren't used to building with foam and you're used to building with another media like balsa wood or whatever, you're never going to find an easier media than balsa wood, than foam, because it is just so dang simple to make repairs. And literally, if you're careful about it, if you crash a plane and you like split hundreds of pieces off, that's a little disappointing. You see how it doesn't go all the way down? I don't think I did that. I think it's just like a bad cut. Or was that, am I going the wrong way? Crap, is it supposed to be that way?
No, I think you're right.
Okay, so I've got it right. What I was gonna say is I don't think I screwed up. I think it just, like it needs to go down further because it wasn't painted far enough.
Right.
So I'm actually gonna press that all the way in until it goes flush with that line, okay? And so whatever, I mean, it's not a big problem. If the battery hits, it'll be a problem.
Yeah.
So we'll set that off to the side. And then of course we've got, I believe these are like a simulated cannon, but I just don't see them, do you? Oh, they're exhaust ports, duh. They go right here. Oh. Look, I knew it was something on that.
That's kind of weird that we have to put those on.
Yeah, it is unusual. Some of these planes we have to do it, sometimes we don't. And it looks like they're gonna go like that, so they would blow out the back, okay? So we are gonna use the mucilage again just because I can, and it's extra excitement for the audience. Is it gonna pop? Put it in the comments. You have to timestamp it. If it pops, it won't be the first time I've blown my load on camera. If you guys know when it was, then you are a true Brian Phillips RC supporter.
Oh man.
And think back, I know when it was.
I don't think I was filming then.
It was another Warbird. You were not filming then. That was back when we had little kids, and the little kids were like keeping you busy, and you didn't have to deal with your big kid.
So I should have more little kids?
I suppose that's one way to do it. Okay, so we're gonna put some screws into this wing before I forget too while we're down here. And I don't know if I'm gonna use this gun or not. I'm kind of debating about it because it's definitely gonna go in. I just don't know exactly where it goes.
Yeah.
It looks like it's halfway, so I assume we can just stick it in and it'll just go.
Oh,
yeah.
well,
Yeah, that's pretty simple. Just pull it out, stick it in, see how it fits.
Get some sticky stuff on it?
Yeah, I'm gonna get the sticky stuff on it right now. Oh, son of a biscuit. There we go. Yes. Okay, guys, pretty amazing process, right? We even warm up the sticky stuff before we ram it in.
Oh, makes it work better sometimes.
Sometimes not. Okay, great. So that's in the hole. Now this Y cable is a nice freebie that we'll use for another model because we're gonna use flap bronze and we'll teach you how to do that. Now flap bronze are not near as good as inboard flaps. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. And you could put one 9-gram servo in here, possibly 2 3.5 gram servos, and you could run these inboard flaps and have an excellent experience, a better flight experience by far, I would say. But we're gonna show you how to do it with something simple. And yes, we will have enough channels that you could actually technically do crow because we've got 6, so we should be able to do crow because we have no retracts. So pretty cool. All right, so the next big move is we're gonna dump these things out and just see what we've got to deal with. Okay, so it looks like we've got control horns. 1, 2, 3, there's 3 of them, and then a bunch of these little screws. Okay, so we have long and we have short. So the long ones are gonna go into the front half of the wing, and then the short ones are gonna go into the back half. Okay, and then over here, we have another bag of goodies. So we're gonna dump that out and just make sure we understand everything we've got. Control linkages. We have what appears, why the heck would they include that? I don't understand that at all. And then we have the 2 big screws. So these ones are gonna be the ones for holding the wing on. And then it looks like we've got 1, 2, 3 more, and then 2 more of the short, and then a couple of these fuel tube hoses, and then we've got backers to go with these 2. So that would be elevator and rudder, and then this would be ailerons, and then spare, I guess, because we only have 4 to actually put in there. All right, so first thing you gotta do, stick this down in here. Now, obviously we don't go in any real particular order on some of these builds. We certainly don't necessarily work through the manual, unless of course it's certain brands have better manuals than others. China screwdriver here, nothing fancy, nothing incredible, although it's not gonna work very good. I think I might need to get a number 2 screwdriver because it's actually kind of a big head on that. And we have recently had quite a few models that have been using number 2 or weird Japanese tip screws. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It's just that it's harder for us to tighten them in on models. See that number 2 tip? Fits way better, but there's just like nothing to press against because it's not a very thick model. So I've got my hand back here and you have to really support it. There's plastic inserted into the foam and it's molded in there. So it's either molded or glued depending on the brand. I think this one's probably glued in. And then they take it to a jig table or something. They jig it up and then they paint all of them at once. And then they move to the next stage. After the paint dries, they pull them off the jig. Or they put them on a paddle or something like that. But in this case, I have enough to hold on to back here, so it's not so bad. It's just plastic holding to another plastic insert on the fuse. So we're actually screwing into a plastic member, not a nut zert, okay, on this one. That's why it looks like a self-tapping screw. Okay, so we've got that attached. You notice there's a little bit of a gap here, right? My side just a little bit too. I'm gonna see if I can take that out by just torquing it down a little bit more. There's another half a turn. I just don't think it's gonna close all the way, which is fine. That should be good for what we're doing. Okay, so now the next thing we have to do is we have to get all these control horns in. They did give us a spare for that screw, which is good.
Okay.
And what do you think first, camera crew? Should we go to the ailerons or should we go to the tail?
I don't know. I don't think it's gonna make a huge difference, is it?
The only thing is I put that stupid antenna on right now and while it does look really cool, that is nice looking, I now have to have it upside down.
Do you want a plane stand?
I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and build it with the canopy off. That should be fine. And I'm gonna put the prop over the edge of the counter so I've got a little something to work with. Okay, great. So now, our next move, of course, is going to entail building all these little control armatures, control horns. And you can see they pass through real simple. You don't have to necessarily glue them because we have all the appropriate hardware to screw these together. So you're gonna have one of these backers that goes up here on the top. Now, if you wanted to glue them, you might be able to get a slightly better looking finish, but I would suggest that you just use the screws because this a long-standing design seems to work pretty good. And I'm not sure which screw I want to use actually.
And are all the control horns the same? So they're all gonna line up?
I don't know, it looks like there's only 2 holes on this, and I thought there was gonna be 4. Why is there only 2? See, there's only 2. So 2 are key pins and then 2 are screw holes. So I think I'm gonna try, gosh, that's big. It might be too big, but you gotta start somewhere. Now one tip you can do if you want, you can use an impact or a screwdriver, but just keep in mind you have to let go in time. It will not stop. It's just gonna rip the thing apart. Okay, so I'm gonna just go into this. Feels like it's going okay. And all you're doing is you're taking 2 surfaces and you're mating them to, oh, that's way too long.
I was gonna say that.
I'm already penetrating. How about I just take and I'll go to like the next size down, But in the meantime, I want to try a short one on this corner.
Okay.
So it looks like they just have an assembly that they ship with these. And the assembly calls for a variety of different screws. But then you only need, you know, like the one that's correct. Oh yeah, that went really good. Okay. That was totally fine.
That was the shortest?
That was the shortest. So on the leading edge, there's going to be probably the middle length, actually. There's long, then there's slightly less long, then there's middle, then there's, well, it's not middle, there's only 4 sizes. Oh, that's why you gotta be careful. That wasn't even biting the top at all. Goodness gracious. Oh, it's still on there though. Okay, so you see the amount of penetration we have? Felt like I was getting good purchase, but I evidently was not. Okay, I'm poking my finger so I can feel it now. So we'll see if that works, and then I'm gonna go to, let's show the people a super close-up of this because it's gonna be hard to articulate this otherwise. These are the longest, these are the shorter, and then these are the shortest. Okay, so these go on the trailing edge, and then this goes on the leading edge. I'm gonna try this, okay. Sorry for the confusion there, folks.
So in this application, we probably aren't gonna use those long.
The longer ones will just be spares, or they'll go back to the elevator maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's only gonna be 2 on each side, so it's not too bad. This is better than, you know, some other brands like Dynam, excuse me, where you would spend 7 or 8 hours doing this on the plane. Which, by the way, some people love that, and I have to remember that some people are not always living a lifestyle of like, hurry up and get it done.
That's true.
So if you're into spending some time, don't hear that the wrong way. We just, you know.
We just want people to know what they're getting into.
Well, that's right. That's kind of why we share what we share. And I'm going to take this, and you can see there's like a tapered side here. So if you go this way, okay, and then I'm going to hold it on my finger, then you can just stick it from back here and get the alignment. Or what I've done in the past too is I've used a drip of glue just to hold it in place if it's in a really awkward way. But in this case, I'm going to start with the longer screw. I think it's going to be easier to get the longer screw going. And it's pretty awkward no matter how you slice it, really. But you can do it, guys. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm thinking that this is going to be the exact same process for 3 more spots because we have the rudder, 2 elevators, and then 2 ailerons. And so you guys can imagine what it'd be like if you watch the whole thing, because this is a Brian Phillips video. It's still gonna be like 2 hours long, so don't worry, you're not gonna get shortchanged. But we're gonna pause and we'll come back when we get these all installed. Okay, I screwed the pooch big time on this, guys. I wanna show you something. I totally just ran those screws in from the wrong side. It's super embarrassing, but sometimes, you know, we make mistakes. And here's the thing, watch this. This is actually supposed to be mounted, and this backer is actually supposed to just set on there almost like that. And then the screw comes in from the other side, which is totally weird. I've never seen them like that before. Well, maybe I should have seen them like that before and I just didn't because I never did it right. But anyway, I'm gonna flip this plane over and I'm gonna show you what I was doing wrong, okay? Now, which side am I supposed to be screwing into? Gotta keep it straight, you're gonna have to. Why are you on that side? Push that down, and then watch this. Now it goes right in with no problems. Oh, that is so embarrassing, guys. I'm sorry, I totally misread that. I haven't had that big of a misread for a long time, but that was upside down, totally upside down. And now this is gonna go down, and it's gonna line up and squish that into the foam, and then I don't even know how the other side bit. I doubt it did, okay? So now we're gonna check the other sides, because now look at that, guys. Now we've got good purchase, everything's holding on nicely, and I don't even know how this worked. I don't think it did, because I wasn't actually biting the other side. I was threading through the wrong side, folks. So I'm gonna just lay these aside. So I need to go to the outboard portion of the wing on the short one. So I know that we said we'd come back after all 5 are done, but I said I wanted to make sure that we communicated to you people watching how we made a mistake, how we caught it, which was just by pure happenstance, to be honest, because I had trouble getting it together. Okay, so the tall one's supposed to be on the inboard portion. Now, of course, my holes are going to be threaded on these, so we may get kind of a bad bite, honestly. So I guess we'll have to keep an eye on that. Oh yeah, we got good bite there. Oh yeah, we're really good there. So now let's look at that a little bit closer. Yep, it's in there. I think I need to put a longer screw on that one though, just because of my mistake. Because I want to make sure I get the threads all the way down in there and biting all the way down the length. Even though it's going to have more penetration on the other side, I would rather feel safe than sorry on this and go with that longer screw. And that means that I'm going to get a better purchase all the way through the length of it, instead of having the tapered tip part way down. So it does look a lot nicer because then the top of the wing is flat. You do have to use those backers though. There is no getting around it. Okay, so that's what we did wrong. My apologies, folks. And should we do one more just from Virgin so they can see it? We never did work the rudder. The rudder has a thinner pinch hinge, so just be aware of that. Okay, so on the back side of the plane, you're gonna do it the same way. In this case, we've got it's gonna go forward, the control horn. I need to be on the top, I need to be inboard, okay? You're on the wrong side again. On the top, we're gonna go with a long screw. And the long screw is, where are the long screws? Here's one long screw. We're gonna pass that in, because this is a thick rudder, okay? Then we're probably gonna use a medium on the bottom, okay? So if you're anything like me, your fingers are gonna be sore after you do this, especially if you do it wrong 3 times. Okay, so that's a very good purchase. I don't feel like we're gonna lose anything. Then I'm gonna do a medium length screw for this bottom lower corner. And this, of course, is that part that broke in packaging. Okay, so we're just gonna walk this all the way in. Oh, and by the way, I think I had mentioned this to some of you guys, but FMS is shipping these things from North America, and you'll be able to get them in 2 to 3 days if you're in North America. If you're overseas or whatever, I don't know how long it's going to take, or Canada, but there is a special Canada link, which we have linked in our videos. You just click on this particular item, and if you're in Canada, you can go ahead and purchase now, which is something good. Some of the oversized packages were not allowed to be shipped previously, so that's now been worked out, which is amazing. Okay, great. So getting back to the point, also while you're back here, make sure you press in on the wings, make sure there's nothing that is still sloppy or loose, okay? And then I'm gonna take this and we're gonna do the rest and we'll come right back. Same exact thing as ailerons. All right, so we got all the control horns on. That was more tedious than it had to be because I screwed up. So my apologies if you guys were following along and you screwed up too. That's one of the reasons why it's nice to watch this video all the way through, and then you'll see where I've made mistakes. Generally we catch them, sometimes we don't. Okay, now these are linkages and they go in and out like this or like this. Make sure that they don't pull off. We have some recent history with that. Okay, so you can see how it's kind of protruding through there. And then this little thing will snap in. Do not snap it until you're ready. There's a good chance you're only gonna get it once or twice if you're lucky. And then you can take this fuel tube, actually stick it over the tip and then just kind of slide it back like that. So it's to about the point where it pivots, okay? And what that's gonna do for you is it's going to keep it from getting lost. If you slide it back here, it'll just fall off, okay? Then you take your instructions and you go to the page where it shows you exactly where to do what you need to do. Okay, that's what that Allen is for, I'm assuming, something like that. So we don't have to actually install that. Okay, so let me guess, they don't even show you where to do it. Looks like somewhere between the screw and the outside. Okay, so we're gonna go to the outermost hole. Now, one thing to think about is once this is snapped in the outermost hole, then I'm thinking that you wanna kind of get it aligned. Okay, so I'm gonna go on the inside of the wing. I don't even know what the drawing showed. This is a digital 9-gram servo, as opposed to an analog 9-gram servo, as opposed to a digital digital metal gear servo. This is plastic. It has a P at the end of the model number, so you can tell it's plastic gear. You would generally have enough weight capacity for metal gear servos all the way across this whole model. But just to be clear, metal gear servos are generally superior, and I'm not gonna center those because this thing may not be in the exact center position from the radio. So we'll come back to that after a little bit, but we can at least get these things plopped into position. And we want them to be symmetrical, so I'm gonna pick the same spot. Even though that one is all the way forward right now, it's gonna go centered as soon as we power it up. Same thing with the elevator, same thing with the rudder, and there are 2 elevators, so just be mindful of that as you get to that build point. Okay, so as you can see, we have the model built. Now, I said earlier that we were gonna use an AR631. AR631 is gonna be a great option for this, and that's what we're gonna use for our radio setup. But what would be even better than a 631 would be to be using an AR630, because then you have no antenna and you have end pins. End pins would be nice in this application. Now, Spectrum, if you're listening, it'd be really cool if we had a 4-channel with AS3X and safe, because then you would be able to take advantage of this exact type of plane. And there are quite a few hand-launched planes that are 4 channels, and so it'd be cool to see that. But at any rate, the 631 is gonna be a great option as well. It's like $5 more, I think, than the 630. But the thing is, when you get into this echelon, you're not gonna wanna probably use a 637T. It's just too expensive. There's way too much. You know, this is small, but even the 637 is quite a bit bigger. It's maybe 50% larger. And the thing is, you just don't have that much room in here. So just keep that in mind. We're gonna go through exhaustively exactly how to set this up, but we're gonna get ready to leave for family plans. So hopefully you guys will stay tuned. And when we come back, it's gonna be dark. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching. All right, so radio setup is next, but we need to mark the CG. So we went to page 17, and they show that it's 40 millimeters back from the leading edge. Now, technically on this model, there's a molding line that's right about that spot. So I'm just gonna turn on these electronic calipers and go to 40 millimeters. They don't give us a plus or minus range, but just look where that is, folks. It's not that far back. So it's not very far back. I thought I was gonna be at this red dot, but I was mistaken, okay? So if you I usually just take my marker and I'll mark it, actually, I need to go out a little bit just so I can see it easier. And I'll mark it something like that. Okay, so it's pretty simple. I'm just using a guide of where this molding line is. And then when I'm ready to test the CG, all I have to do is flip it over and I can feel that little bump. Now you can also apply something to the top of the surface rather than making a dent, but we found that this method works really nice, and then it's super easy to implement. And so we just generally do the easiest method that's gonna be repeatable, and we've had good luck with it. Sometimes the planes will have a piece of plastic right where you need to mark the CG, so it's very hard to feel it. And you can use a hot glue drip or some CA, you can build that up and make something to touch. It's easier to feel it when it's upside down. Okay, so now we need to get into radio setup. And one thing I just wanted to mention is that I had to use 2 adapters to go from an XT60 to an EC3 and then back to EC3 down to JST. Now that's only because I didn't want to cut off this end and basically solder on a proper connector, which if I just soldered on an XT60 or an EC3, that'd been fine. But in this case, an XT60 is preferable on the receiver end or on the actual airplane end, because then I can plug in either an EC3, an IC3, or an XT60. So if you're gonna use this type of XT60, that's what you would use. Okay, this one happens to be blue. They're usually orange or yellow. And then you could plug in either this, or you can actually plug in the EC3 into that. So it'll work out good. This connector is just really hard to unplug. So, but for now we've got that ready to go. That is a 2S pack, and it's in 1300 milliamp hour, and this is 30C. So we'll link to that battery, and we'll basically continue with our radio setup now, but we've got all that stuff sitting out. So really the next step for us is gonna be to break out the radio or the transmitter and receiver. In this case, this is the AR631. Now, I would highly recommend that you consider the AR630 in this application because it's got the internal antenna as opposed to the external antenna, but this is what we have today, so we're gonna go ahead and use it. Now, this will give you a little bit better range, I think, but Spectrum claims that there is no difference in range. I just don't know if I buy it. And then I've got some double-sided tape here. You could use Velcro if you really needed to, or you can just glue the thing in. Now, this is gonna be a spatially aware system, so just keep in mind that this receiver needs to be mounted in the plane. It needs to be a part of the plane so that it can be spatially aware. Now, the tough part is I don't know exactly if it's gonna go here, or if we're gonna have to put it down in there, or if we're gonna have the battery up here or the battery down there. So just in quick, in a quick test, I want to take the battery and I want to put it in here where I think it's going to go. And then I want to plop the receiver where I think it's going to go before I tape it down or glue it down, just so that we can make our adjustments, because it will impact the CG, the center of gravity. And so if you don't get this step right, then sometimes you're going to lock yourself into getting a battery in and out will be very difficult. Okay, so I'm just going to tuck everything in where I kind of think it's going to go. And just from best judgment in past experience, yes, adapters and all. And we're going to see if that all fits in there. And we can get it. It's just holding down by magnets. So it's not perfect, but I'm going to put my fingers onto the spots where I want to balance it. And I can tell that we're significantly tail heavy right now. So that means we have to figure out a way to do one of two things. We either have to add nose weight or we need to push this battery forward. So I think probably what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to push the battery forward, but you see where that's going to put us? That's going to put us right on top of the ESC. So that's not ideal because the ESC is going to get hot, but that's probably the way it's going to have to be in this application, because we need that battery further forward so we can get that weight forward. But it also helps to validate that we're going to be able to have our receiver back here. So let's go ahead and just test this theory. And it's always better, in my opinion, to use the battery instead of dead weight. A bigger battery or a battery in the correct position, I prefer over just dead weight, because dead weight does nothing. The advantage of dead weight is that you can use less of it and further out to make the CG work. That's pretty close. I don't think we're going to get a lot better than that unless we use a heavier battery or if we do something more drastic. So I think for now, it's kind of good, because then we don't have to worry about any shelf liner, and when everything is said and done, we should be okay. And then of course that ESC can be pushed forward as far as possible as well. And all the wiring and everything will go. This is a little bit too big to fit down into that cavity, just full disclosure. So, and I'm just gonna pull all the leads out and just kind of understand where everything sits. Oh yeah, I should be able to reach. And now I'm making my decision on what direction I want my receiver to sit, based on where the wires need to come out. It'd be kind of nice if I could feed this back, but I don't want the push rods to damage the antenna. But it does have a nice little pocket back there. I'm just gonna see if I get my eyes in there. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's probably gonna catch on anything, but I can't guarantee that. So I think I'm probably safer to just do it right here. Now this rod is gonna move forward and backward. And then this rod is also going to move forward and backwards. So you need to be mindful about where things are going to move once the plane starts flying. And so what I think I might end up having to do, obviously we need to keep this area open for the battery. I think I might go to the side this time, like that, which we don't often do, but it is definitely something you can do. I prefer to put these vertical, or excuse me, flat. And I prefer not to put them on an angle like this, because you have to make quite a nasty adjustment to make it not try to fly like that. And I can show you where to do it if we were to ever set one up that way, but we're not going to set that up that way, because I don't think it's necessary. It's just going to be a waste of time if we did that. So I think really, I'm sort of torn between doing something like centering it here and on the side. What do you think, camera crew?
They seem fairly similar in pros and cons. Do you have a nice flat spot there on the side? Yeah,
but then there's nothing in the center. Oh. There's a void. But I almost wonder if I could stick the receiver in there. Yeah, I could, except I'm gonna have plugs in it.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of...
Maybe then back here, just favored a little bit towards the front so that you have plenty of room for those rods.
Yeah, I don't know. And then this we don't have any sort of a plug for it, so we always have to kind of work through this. I think really in this case what we're going to do is we're not going to actually mount it until we have our wires landed. That's something we don't normally do. Okay, now what's the next step? If we don't have it mounted, we know generally where it's going to go, but we don't know what pin is going to land where, or rather what plug goes where on here. So that means we have to build a profile in the radio. So once we do the profile, then we can continue on. So I'm going to just add new model. I'm going to create an acro. That's a different style. You know, you can either do an acro or heli or quad. In this case, I'm going to make an acro. And it does take longer the more planes you have. And so in our case, it takes a while because we have a lot of them. And basically what we're going to be looking at is what channel needs to be plugged to each of the surfaces. Okay, so model select is where we just came from. Model type is already set. Model name, this is where we type it in, 136 colon space, and then it says acro, but in our case, we're going to type in the 0 in the 800 millimeter class, which in this case is actually 750. All right, so we have 0 by FMS, 800 millimeter size class, and that happens to be 750, so I put that in parentheses. Then we can walk out of that. We have to set the aircraft type, so now we set what type of wing we're gonna have, which this is gonna be flaperons, and then the normal tail. And you can select an image from one of the standard images. I think we have one that's similar, be like a Warbird B-51 sort of thing. We'll go with that. Actually, hold on. Do we have, nope. BF-109, Spitfire, T-28, F4U Corsair, that's P-47, but close enough. Okay, and then flight mode setup, because we're gonna be using the Spectrum transmitter and receiver, we're gonna want AS3X and safe. So I wanna set up one flight mode for that. So we'll do F mode. Now there's no retracts on this, so we can use switch A for automatically, or for choosing between AS3X and safe. Now ordinarily, I prefer to use this for retracts, and then I use this switch B for flaps. Then I use this switch for some other auxiliary that we don't hardly ever use, and then D would be where I would go between AS3X on, off, or safe. But in this case, I'm gonna make it so my normal setting, gear down, would be AS3X. And then it's gonna be safe up here. Now the problem with that is that I'm gonna try to go into safe when I'm taking off because I'm gonna put up my gear because I'm used to that. So that's the only drawback there, but that's just a preference and something that you'll get used to. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna set it to switch A, which means I only have 2 modes. So I'm gonna have AS3X on and AS3X off. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna type, hit cancel, cancel. I'm just gonna make a name for these. Now keep in mind, this is just a name. It is not actually making the assignment of the activity. I'm literally calling it what I want it to say on the screen about in this area when we go back to the main screen. So later, I'll show you how to make the actual assignment, but then your audio event will already be set, AS3X, and then we can scroll way down to about here and come right back. And down there, AS3X. Okay, then we're gonna go in here, we're gonna do the same thing, highlight, cancel, cancel, and then what we can do is we can type in what we want, which is gonna be safe, sensor aided flight envelope, so we'll type that now. So it says the word safe, and then when I scroll way back down to about the same area, then we can assign this to safe. All right, so we've got safe.
Safe mode, AS3X mode.
Cool, okay, so now we can hit back. And channel assign, I wanna make sure to unassign auxiliary 2 by going and clicking and then going to inhibit, because we're gonna be using switch B to control flaps. And we don't want that to be automatically assigned to switch B, okay? So also then we want the gear to be assigned to AS3X or safe, and we'll show you how to do that in the next part. Okay, so here we go. We're back to regular mode. First thing you wanna do is set up throttle cut, highlight switch H in my case, and then I'm just gonna test it by looking down at the screen and moving the throttle stick. So it's working because there's no movement of throttle. When the throttle cuts off, you can see that it's moving. Throttle cuts back on and tested. Good. Then we're gonna set our timer. Did you see anything about timer?
No, I did not.
I'm gonna say 1 out with 25% over being the threshold. And I'm gonna set it, 5 minutes is probably not a bad place to be. Don't know. Well, actually at 1 minute, I want a voice warning. I want nothing at 20, and I want voice at 10 seconds, so it's gonna count down. And then I want a tone and vibrate for expiration, and then tone every minute thereafter. Okay, so now I wanna go back up here and do dual rates and expo. This is something that's highly subjective, but it's a good starting point if you guys aren't used to doing this. I like to assign it all to switch F. So the first setting is gonna be 5 with 100% rates. The second setting is going to be 10. That's going to be where we start. And then the third setting is going to drop the rates down to 90. And then we're going to run the expo at 20. So you've got a halving effect or a doubling effect with a little bit extra because we drop down the rates, okay? And then all we do is we just set that to all three control axis. And you're like, but Brian, what if I want to control all three separate? Well, congratulations, do that. This is a subjective move. You can do it however you want. But if you want my advice, my suggestion is keep it as simple as you can, get your maiden under your belt, and then make fine-tune adjustments after you land. So this is strictly to get you back to the ground the first time. Then you can make an adjustment like, hey, it's an extra dead calm day, I want no expo. Ooh, it's a little bit windier today, I want a little extra expo because I'm going like crazy fast or something. I don't know, whatever your excuse is. But you can start there. Or you hand off the controller to a lesser experienced pilot right there. And they're flying for a minute and you're like, okay, hand it back over. I'm gonna go back to the regular mode, okay? That's just an idea. But I've been doing this for a long time and it's been working very good for me. It's a good basis to start with. You want a little bit of expo on all three control axes, and then you can back it off or you can increase if you need to. And that's what's so nice about the middle half, in the middle, double. And then when you land, say you want more expo on the rudder, well then we just go into the rudder and you would change your middle setting. So we're in the middle of switch F. You would change that to say 20. Then you would make this 40 and maybe drop that down to like 75. Then you would make this 10. So it'd be a halving and a doubling still. So you can always change. Okay, cool. So we've got that set. We're not gonna mess with differential, but the differential does exist with flaperons. And flap system, we're gonna make an assignment to switch B, but we're gonna set it all to just two values. We don't know which direction we want it, and we don't really care, okay? And then we're just gonna do a small elevator correction. Well, actually, we're gonna do no elevator correction yet because we still have to set things, okay? So we're gonna intentionally leave that in the middle for now. And we're gonna set the speed to 2 seconds. And why in the middle, camera crew? Because we need to mechanically adjust our linkages first. Okay, so now walking out, throttle cuts on. We can go over to monitor mode now. That shows you where everything should get hooked up. Throttle, right aileron, elevator, rudder, gear, left aileron. Auxiliary 2, which is not tied to switch B, that's good. And gear. Now keep in mind that's just a label. But we're gonna assign this channel within the flight modes to activate things as such. So now we can leave this screen on. We'll grab our little receiver. We'll just kind of roll the plane forward and we can look at this real close. Okay, so we have on the end here, it says S plus minus. So the signal is gonna go toward the label and the minus is gonna go away. And so we have two wires here that come out of the wing. I'm just gonna grab one. This is the shortest wire, so I'm picking the shortest wire just because it will guarantee me that I can reach. Okay, so this one obviously goes to what would be the right aileron, so it's gonna go into port 2. Port 2 is actually the third set of pins, just keep that in mind because the first port is designated for bind and programming as well as SRX L2. And that is gonna be a serial control method that can be used to control many channels through one wire. We don't often do that, but it does exist. Okay, so now the left aileron is actually on, just looking at the screen over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's all the way on channel 6. Okay, so we'll just plug that into channel 6. Then the elevator, since this one happens to be the next one I grabbed, in no particular order, it goes on port 3. So we need the brown wire, and you'll notice I'm kind of untwisting wires as I get them and plug them in. This will help with cable management as we work our way through this process. And then this is going to be the rudder. So the rudder is on channel 4, so it's right next to the elevator. Okay, so channel 4 is right there, so I'm just kind of lining it up and sliding it in. Now, how do you know what's what on these wires? Well, signal on a Hextronics color code is going to be orange, then red is plus voltage, and brown is negative, or minus voltage, if you like to call it that way, even though it's wrong, it's a ground. So it's a reference point from which we measure the voltage in a direct current circuit. Okay, throttle is going to go into the throttle port, which is on channel 1. So you notice the pins or the wires are a little bit thicker on there because it's coming from the ESC. Electronic speed control, which also has a BEC, and that's where the power comes from to energize the receiver and all of the stabilizer activity and the actual radio that's doing the transmission and reception. Because this is a telemetry receiver, it's actually going to be broadcasting data and receiving data. So that's cool. Now, we're going to be limited on what data we get, but if this were a smart ESC, this is a cheaper plane with a smaller ESC. So you could actually replace it with an avian light, and then you could plug it into this and you would get full telemetry, including all sorts of different data from the ESC and from your smart pack if you're using a smart pack, or a dumb pack if you're using a dumb pack. In our case, we're going to have to use a voltage alarm if we want to keep our voltage data in mind. Okay, so now I just need to decide. I'm actually a little bit tempted to just see if I can get this to work, but I just hate having that antenna there. I think it's probably just going to have to wrap back toward me. Lay this on its feet like that. And then I'm going to see if I can do that. You suppose that'll work? I think that'll probably work. I'm just really nervous about where that wire is going to come out.
I don't think it's going to move that much, is it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think it's going to go that far. But I think what we need to do is, let's go ahead and first of all, let's try to take this green side off. We always have trouble getting this stuff off. And if you've ever used this stuff, this is from a Lemon receiver that we used years ago, and we just didn't need the backing, so we used it. I wonder if maybe this is just better to just go sideways on this particular plane. I feel like it might work to just go sideways with it. Let's try it. I don't think we're gonna have a bit of problems. So I'm gonna press that down, and then of course I have to peel this backing. If you ever find yourself trying to peel this backing and you have trouble with it, one trick that has worked for me in the past, and probably should work today, is I'll take an X-Acto knife and I'll get up under the lip of it. And then even though you'll sacrifice a little teeny quadrant of it, you can definitely always get that stuff peeled then. Then you pull that backing. Make sure you cover this because you don't want to chop suey on camera. I've only done that a few times. And then I'm going to actually take and press this on. Of course, camera crew's going to be on the wrong side. So I'm going to press this on down here, as far down as I can so I don't interfere with the canopy. Oh yeah, got a good purchase on both top and bottom. I didn't think we'd have quite enough thickness, but we do. Okay, just pressing it on there for a minute. And as you can see, it's wanting to kind of lift. See that? That's no me gusta. There's a better contact area right there. So I'm getting contact above and below. Now it's holding it steady. So now that we have that done, I need to address some cable management issues right off. I'm going to hang this prop over the edge. And let's just look at what we've got going on here. We've got all these wires, and these wires aren't doing us any good. Also, these markers to go around where the flaps would be are definitely not staying down very good. I'm a little bit concerned they're going to buzz in the wind. So you see, I'm just going to double this back into a little loop. And then I'm just going to try to tuck this down. I'm just having trouble hanging on to stuff today. This plane is just small enough that it's kind of unwieldy to hold while you're working on it. Okay, see this, guys? So then these wires are not going to be any concern. You don't have to worry about hitting your own control surfaces there. And that's pretty much all the cable management I think we need. I'd really like this ESC lead to sit down in this channel so that it's not interfering with where the battery goes. But there again, I do that, and then I feel like we just cause more problems. So I'm going to leave it out. And then this, of course, is the battery lead. Now, what do we do with the antenna is always the $10,000 question. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to run it back so that it's back here, and then come back out and kind of go around. But you can see we should be able to go under where the receiver is. If I would have thought about that in time, I could have done it differently. I could actually, now you don't want to bend that portion that sticks out the end, this end here, because it's more vulnerable to damage, and you don't want to kink it, but you can bend it. So I'm going to bend it a little bit. I just don't think I'm going to get that thing through without grabbing forceps. So why don't I just grab forceps and just do it that way? Okay, so I have forceps here now. And I'm just feeding this back. And the camera crew is just trying to keep a good view here, so I have no idea what you guys can see or what you can't see. But I'm just gonna take this and reach in here, see if I can grab that little tip. Now you don't wanna clamp onto them because this, of course, these forceps could destroy that piece of wire. And I think what's happening is it's grabbing onto, it's sticking to the back side of the tape now because the double-sided tape. Let's see if this thing comes off. Nope, good. That's what I was hoping would happen. I'm gonna try to feed this under here another time. And I'm just gonna drop it down. I know you guys aren't being able to see very good, I'm sure, but I apologize for that. It's just kind of the nature of this beast right now. So now that I've got that clamped on, I'm gonna walk it back out. There we go, finally. It's a boy. Okay, so as you can see, we've got that pulled through. Now that we've pulled that through, then we won't have to fight that every single time we get in here to put the battery in or whatever, okay? What I'm hoping to do is kind of push all this ball of crap down here, and that looks like a pretty nice little cable management if it will stay. And that's always the $10,000 question, right? Is it gonna stay? Then I'm gonna run this to the other side, and then I'm gonna do a little bit of a hook back. So like I said, this is not, you know, the right way, and every other way is the wrong way. This is just a way. And also another trick that works really sharp is if you are trying to protect an antenna, okay? And that's probably the most I've dinged up an antenna in a long time, so I hope we don't have issues there. But one thing you can do that works really sharp is you can get a toothpick like this, okay? And what you can do is you can find a spot where you'd like the antenna to go. And then you can take that toothpick and you can literally drive it in and make a nice little pocket for your antenna to ride in. Okay, and then once you pull that out, you can take your antenna and slide it into the pocket that you've just created. And guess what? That pocket is gonna protect your antenna, except mine went all the way through. Figures. But that's actually about perfect because you can see where the antenna's going. So now it's a nice, clean, you know, professional looking, whatever you want to call it. Okay, cool. So now the next step is gonna be, we actually have to energize this for the first time and get some of the last radio setup done, including hooking up all the linkages. So this is where you're gonna be vulnerable from a prop attack. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure my throttle cut's on. I'm gonna make sure my throttle stick is down. I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna click into function list and go to bind and just hover over it so it's there when I'm ready. And then I'm gonna go ahead and stick this battery right in where I believe it's gonna go for flight, just so I can kind of get a feel for how things are gonna fit. Oh yeah, all the way up there, nice. Then obviously in our case, because the CG is still on the edge of being a little bit tail heavy, I'm gonna make sure all my connectors and everything are up front. So it's the most weight possible up front. We're gonna line up a polarity, so the red is toward me. We're gonna plug it in. And then once we're plugged in, we're gonna try to hold everything kind of still. Protect your hands at this point. Now it's in bind mode. So I can go ahead and hit bind. Click yes. I'm gonna bind.
DSNX 22 milliseconds. Telemetry.
Okay, cool. Very nice, okay. So the binding is complete. So now we have elevator, we have ailerons, and we have rudder. Very good, and steerable tail wheel. So now we also wanna just, before we do anything, we wanna shut off throttle cut and test. Okay, throttle cut is now on and tested. So that's how you protect yourself. I'm gonna clear my timer. Now we can check all the surfaces. Because we're in the middle setting, we should have no output on the flaps or anything like that. So I'm gonna scroll to monitor and just verify, yep, we're good. So now all we need to do is, since we don't have AS3X or safe running right now, we can go ahead and flip this plane over and we can go ahead and start getting things hooked up. Oh, I need to take the canopy off, don't I?
Yeah, for that antenna.
because the antenna's hitting. So now we have to actually fold this over here, and we're gonna go to the outside hole. It looks like I need to screw that in a couple of turns, so I'm gonna just grab this with 3 fingers rather. And then I'm gonna line this up right like that until I feel like it's good. I need another half a turn. And then once you're good, you can just grab this, open it up, and bite it through and verify once more that you're smooth here, okay? Smooth and smooth, pretty good. So now I can snap that in. It's not gonna snap in more than a couple of times, so don't get it messed up. Okay, then I can come over to this side, and I can kind of do the same thing, okay? Well, that's really close actually right now, but of course we're at a weird vertical position. That's gonna be too far the other way, and that's about perfect. So now I'm gonna snap this, and as you can see, we're just a little teeny bit off. So I'm actually gonna go another half a turn in and see how that looks. And it's just guess and check, guys. It's not like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Cool, okay. Now these are flap-arounds, so they're gonna actually function as independent channels. Now we have to do the rudder and the elevators. The elevators, as you can see, are moving in and out, but they are way out there. Goodness gracious. Are we gonna be able to get that much adjustment out of them?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Kind of feel like that is uncalled for.
Well, it looks like they're screwed out really far.
Okay, so we'll just go and see. I'm just concerned that stick is probably gonna be in the way of the actual machining. Yeah, see, that's already sticking through. We're gonna have to make a mechanical adjustment inside. So I'm gonna bring this in just a little bit until it just protrudes. Now we have to make a large mechanical adjustment. So this is where you have a couple of choices. So why don't we do the rudder quick before we continue on, because this will be one that's easier. So obviously the rudder is going to move like this, and so you want to get that centered and do the same thing. So we get to go in a couple turns. So 3 fingers locks it, and then you can spin it. So that was like 5 half turns, okay? Ooh, that's really dang close. Okay, and then it needs to end vertical. Kind of lift it and slide it through. Check for centeredness. Yeah, it's pretty close. There's a lot of slop on that, surprisingly. So I feel like let's try one more, because let's show the people why. See this? It goes over that way. It's favoring that way, just ever so slightly. I mean, barely at all. But devil's in the details on airplanes. So let's go half a turn more, and let's just retest. And before you press that in, now I feel like it's kind of, I would say it's the other way, but whatever, that's good enough. That means we're never gonna get it exactly right. We're always gonna be off one way or the other. And so then that becomes a battle between tail wheel trim and rudder trim. Okay, so we have everything but the elevator hooked up. So let's test these surfaces real quick. Wrong way, correct way, correct way, okay? So that is incorrect. So real quick, we'll just back out of this menu, click, go to servo setup, highlight travel, scroll over to reverse, and then we'll go to ailerons. Right aileron and left aileron. Roll left, roll right. Now remember, these are flap-rons, so that's gonna move them down, and that's gonna move them up. Okay, cool, so we know that's all working, so we can actually go into flap system and change that, but we're not gonna do it yet because we need the elevators hooked up, okay? So we're gonna walk out, we're gonna make sure we're in our neutral setting so we have no elevator correction for flaps, and I'll talk about that a little bit later if you don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so now we need to hook these up. I'm just noticing this bumps on the side here. That's not very good. See that?
Oh,
Looks like something got hot on there. Okay, so now the way this is gonna get adjusted is unfortunately with another tool, but I believe we actually got this tool with the plane. I just so happen to have put it away already between filming events. And so I'm just gonna grab my tool and we're gonna look at it this way. So we have obviously 2 rods that are hooked up to the elevator, okay? So I'm gonna grab, I think it's a 1.5 millimeter. Yep, 1.5 millimeter. And as you can see, we'll just loosen that. Now the alternative is if you didn't have a 1.5 millimeter, you could take a Phillips and just undo that and move it, but you will potentially lose some throw. So loosen that, okay? Bring that up. Then look, if it's nice, it'll hold on for you, which I think it will. Okay, sweet. Now I can take and run these back until they're pretty much where they need to be, guys, which is pretty sweet. And then once they're both in, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to do a different angle if you wanna see that while it's happening. So now I'm just gonna slide this back. all with one hand, of course, is challenging because I'm trying to hold the plane up since I have a screwdriver attached still. And I want that rubber to be back there. Now I can just literally physically move it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, and the same thing is going to be true here. Now this time you'll note that we don't have to measure and adjust. We just kind of literally hook it up and then we're going to snap it in place. And you're like, but Brian, you didn't have to turn them. Yep, that's because it's disconnected up front at the other end of the shaft. But now we just hold our fingers, now that they're attached, we can take and hold our fingers right here on this point and just get them square the way we like them. And look how much overlap there is.
That's
Good
crazy.
lordy, Lord.
Well, good thing we didn't put the receiver there.
No kidding. Okay, so we've got that tightened up. Now we're gonna feel again. Okay, perfect. Now we're gonna move the elevator. Elevator up, elevator down. So it's obviously backward too. Click, go to servo setup, travel, reverse, elevator. Okay, elevator up, elevator down, roll left, roll right, yaw left, yaw right. Very good. Okay, so the primary flight control surfaces are all going in the right direction with reasonable amplitude and no binding that we can see right now. One warning, by the way, I do need to get a different, this is another 1.5. I didn't feel like that tightened enough. Oh yeah, that was like way more. Goodness gracious. The other one slipped on me. Okay, so that being said, let's look where that antenna is. It's not hitting. And even if it did, it's just gonna move out of the way. So I'm okay with that, so long as there's no mechanical issues in putting this down. I also noticed that this battery might interfere actually with the lid, which would kind of suck. You know what? I don't think it's gonna be bad. It's actually gonna hold that in. It's the wire that's kind of screwing with me. See that? Mm-hmm. So as we do this, we're not hitting the receiver, are we? You know what? We may actually be hitting the side of the receiver. So I'm actually gonna take and carve this just a little bit between these 2 points. And this is something I didn't anticipate, but at the same time, this is something that comes up a lot is when you put on your canopy, you may notice that you have a little bit of trimming to do to make everything fit as you had hoped. So remember, don't take out too much structural integrity. You do need that foam to help the plane to stay one piece. So I just cut that out. Let's see how it looks now. Okay. Now I'm just gonna sight down the side. I feel like I'm still hitting some. Oh, that's because I didn't get enough. I didn't remove enough. If you come over from the side I'm looking at, you'll be able to see what I'm seeing. See this? Look, when I put that down, I'm hitting the receiver. So I gotta go back further. Doesn't take a lot. Then we'll go down just a little bit deeper and just take out a little bit of foam. I don't like to have to carve the canopies, but this is such a minor carving. It's not that big a deal. You could do that with an X-Acto knife or with a packing knife or whatever. Sometimes I used to melt the foam too. Okay, so you see that? Oh yeah, I got a good drop now. So we have a better seam there. And it feels way sturdier when that magnet bites. Okay, so that's very important. Very cool looking plane so far. A little disappointed with the amount of throws because I am concerned that we're not gonna have enough. But we're gonna find that out pretty quick here. All right, so elevator up, elevator down, roll left, roll right, yaw left, yaw right. Very good. So now let's talk about flaps. So we're gonna go down to flap system. Whoops, flap system. And now we're gonna set our settings. So we wanna go to regular flight mode. We wanna set that to 0, okay? Then we wanna go to takeoff flaps. Oops, that's the wrong way. So we'll just kind of scroll it down until we see what we like. Yeah, that's probably about right. And we'll do a little bit less for takeoff flaps. Then we'll do just a little teeny bit of correction. Now, sometimes the correction on an outboard aileron that's acting as a flap, an outboard flaperon, the elevator correction is actually backward. So you want the elevator to come up, which is just weird. So I'm gonna exaggerate the movement here. That's gonna be like 1/10 of that, but you see what's happening? That's wrong. I want that to be, that's actually wrong. I want that to be a negative value. And the reason I do that test is so that I can see it. So I'm gonna do like probably 8 and Let's do 5. It's gonna be almost undistinguishable. Up and then up, just a little teeny bit. So now for full landing flaps, I wanna bring them all the way down because there's just not that much deflection there. Okay, so takeoff flaps will look something like this. Takeoff, then landing. And then as you can see, the ailerons continue to operate as they were before. Very good. Takeoff flaps. Okay, cool. Throttle cuts on. Everything is set now. And what we can do is we can go ahead and go in and set up the forward programming. So forward programming, connecting. This is where if your throttle likes to start, you may find that it starts when you exit this menu. So gyro settings, first time setup. Make sure the model has all the wing types configured and everything is reversed. That needs to be, okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now I'm gonna lay this right there. I'm gonna hit continue, and then you're gonna set it on its nose. Set the model on its nose, and then scroll to continue. Orientation has been shown as such. And let's see if that looks right to you guys, because it looks right to me. Yep, that's right. So it knows its spatial awareness is now confirmed and set to that position. Now you can also do that manually, but I've never had to do it manually, except for one time we had a weird issue. Okay, so now we're done. Now we can go to gyro settings. Why is it still saying first time setup? Next. I never actually, I'm gonna set it manually. Was it 4? Mm-hmm. Continue. I never hit continue. Okay, gain channel select. That's going to be up here. So auxiliary 3, you can't just turn it, you have to scroll it in. Auxiliary 3. So that's going to give us our master gain. I'm going to apply. Now watch, it's going to reboot. So just if you're in any doubt, hang on to the plane in case the throttle would turn on. Okay, one dance. That's one dance, okay? Now we're gonna go back into forward programming. We're gonna do our first time setup for safe. Gyro settings. First time safe setup. Flight mode channel. Okay, so the flight mode channel needs to be set to gear.
Safe mode. AS3X mode.
You remember our labels? Now we need to make those assignments to the actual setup. Before setting up safe, a flight mode channel must be configured. We already did that. Now, select the desired flight mode position to adjust settings for each flight mode.
Safe mode.
Okay. Now next. Next. Level model and capture attitude. So you see how that's level? Now I capture. And look what it's done. It made an adjustment. Okay, so it made an adjustment to the pitch and the roll, incidentally, which is kind of weird. But I trust it better than I trust myself. So next. Now, this is setting mode 3, so that's toward me. I want to make safe on. Self-level angle demand. Okay. And then in mode 1, I want safe inhibited. Now it's going to apply. This is where you hang on to the plane just in case it starts running. We've had a couple of times where it, cranked out a 5% or a 3% throttle, but you can hear that it's rebooting. And so that's why you control the plane, because it's your responsibility. And you heard 2 dances. That indicates it's safe is working. Okay, cool. Now, that doesn't mean safe is on, it means safe is working. Throttle cuts on and tested. Elevator up, elevator down, roll left, roll right. Yaw left, yaw right. Take off flaps, roll left, roll right. Check all the surfaces, full landing flaps, roll left, roll right, elevator. Everything's working there. Okay, out of the flaps. Now, I don't hear anything. So what I want to do is I want to give some throttle, 25% to hear if AS3X is working. That's 50% throttle. Down and up. It's a little ticky. You guys hear that? So it's gonna be kind of hard to see the output though. So I'm gonna show you how to check the output. This is obviously AS3X, you can hear it. The gain's all the way up, the gain's all the way down. So I can tell it's working, I just can't see what direction it's working. So the trick of the day is to click, scroll down to forward programming, throttle cuts on, forward programming. If you don't have throttle cut on, it'll block you. Gyro settings, AS3X settings, and gain 4X. Whoops, 4X. Now watch this. Now you can really tell what's going on. So elevator's gonna go up, it's gonna go down, it's gonna roll left or right, depending on what I'm doing. So, camera crew. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold the camera so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna move this, and that rudder needs to go whatever direction I'm moving. Okay, so it's gonna go that way. 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 Usually if you have one direction figured out, it's gonna figure it out, and that's gonna tell you. Okay, now the elevator up, elevator down. Seems to go down more than up, but that's fine. Elevator up, elevator down. And I'm just looking at the wing route. Elevator up, elevator down. But definitely going the right direction. Now, because these are two unique channels, we're gonna look at the ailerons separately. Okay, roll it up, it goes up. Roll it down, it goes down. Roll it up, it goes up. Roll it down, it goes down. And if you can't see, just really focus in on that spot. Down, up, down, okay? So that's how you check. Now, you don't want this much gain. It's gonna be probably too much, but you can actually master gain that down to nothing. Or you can be smart and change the 4X to probably 1X, okay? 1X is probably gonna be enough. Okay, now why do I say probably enough? I've had, I think, one plane where we've been in 2X and it was unusual. Okay, so now that we have that working, we can go ahead and walk out of the menu and just go back to our normal function. Okay, so now at this point, we need to test safe, and safe is gonna ride on top of AS3X, so we're doing this in an order where you can test all the surfaces the way that you need to test them. So now, here's two tricks. Sticks down like that. You can see when I move into safe, there'll be limitations on the bank angles and pitch angles.
Safe mode.
Okay, very obvious lowering of the output. Back to AS3X.
Safe mode. AS3X mode.
Now you can see why that's handy, okay? So obviously we have a lot more throws, and with safe mode, the other way you can check is flip the plane on its belly or on its back. It's trying to find the quickest route to level by rolling me this way. Now watch the ailerons, watch them like a hawk. When it gets level, it's gonna stop leveling. Now look at the elevator. I'm gonna put the pitch up all the way pointed straight at the ground, and it's gonna try to pull out of it. Now, going straight up, look what it's gonna do. It's gonna try to bring you to level. Pretty sweet system, and that is what auto leveling will do for you. I'm out of auto leveling and safe now. So basically right now, what have we done? We've built the plane, we've checked the CG, we've figured out what battery size, charged it, talked about adapters, we've plugged everything into a receiver, an appropriate receiver, and also offered an option that's another receiver, which would be the AR630. Couple bucks cheaper, also has one less thing to deal with the antenna, but the 631's good. Also, you're gonna get end pins, so you may find that it's a little easier to plug in on this type of application, although this did work out pretty sharp.
Yep.
So I must say, that was a pretty smooth build. We did talk about glue, we talked about mucilage, we talked about putting these things together, and I also screwed up and put those in upside down, so my apologies there. Hopefully that wasn't too off-putting. And we've also not talked about the battery, the fact that it's just pressure fit in there. If your plane does that, it's crashing. And I just want to show something. That battery hasn't moved. I'm actually fully confident that that's going to be okay because there's a block built into the canopy. It's going to trap it. So I think we're in good shape there. I think this plane is going to be a fun one to fly. I fear that it's going to be kind of hard to fly. So hopefully it's not as hard as I think it's going to be. And AS3X and Safe will tend to tame the hardest flying planes. But to be frank, you may need a heavier battery in there. And also, I'm a little surprised it's only showing a 2S. But that being said, we have experienced a lot of planes in the size class that claim to be a 2S and end up ultimately flying on 3S. If that's the case, we'll bring that to you. But for now, this is the 750 millimeter, which is in 800 millimeter size class, 0 from FMS. The thing looks just absolutely fantastic, almost like a model. But this one flies, which is super cool. And if you guys are wanting to get into this hobby and you're wanting to chase along and do this sort of thing, there's no reason you can't do it. That being said, this is probably not going to be a beginner plane in my expectation because we've flown a lot of planes and I can just tell. This one's going to be more for the experienced pilot in my opinion. Even with Safe and AS3X, some planes are going to be tough to fly. I think this one's probably going to lend itself toward tougher to fly than easier to fly. And there is kind of a weird size class in the middle where the electronics jump up in such a big step that I feel like you don't get that like lightness and airiness of the 1.2 meters and 1.4 and 1.7 meters. But then you get down into the super small stuff like the 400 millimeter Yishins and things like that, which are really fun, but they're more of like a toy. So I think this is a great entry level if you know how to fly. But that being said, I'm making some assumptions based on past experience from performance of planes just like this. And part of the reason you come to Brian Phillips RC is because you have A, a lot of time on your hands, and B, you love RC aviation, whether it be helicopters, quads, fixed wing aircraft, which is our bread and butter, or maybe even PPG or full scale aircraft, which is something that we're very interested in too here on this channel, and we want to bring more of it. But at this point, we just want to know, if you guys love the video, please help us out and smash the like button. But mostly, if you want to help support us financially, buy these planes when you're going to buy them, because we know you're going to buy them. Buy them from the links in the video description below. You'll be supporting our family of 6, and yes, supporting our channel, Brian Phillips RC. Also, special thanks to our Patreons who give us monthly support, which is super cool. If you want to be one, there's a link in the video description below, just right after this. And then also PayPal if you've got, regard for us and you want to throw us a few bucks, but you're in Australia and you can't buy this particular plane because nobody will ship it to you. We get it, we totally understand, and we appreciate you guys supporting us in that special way if you decide you want to make a financial contribution. So it always does warm our hearts when we see those things, and a special Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's and all that stuff, and hopefully this gets released in time. But just keep in mind, FMS is shipping to Canada too now, and if you want to buy this thing from the link, you'll still be supporting us. So we appreciate you doing that. You can get these things in just a couple of days if they're in stock. And hopefully if you're watching this when we just published it, it should be in stock. We try our very best to release footage when things are in stock, because we know that after all, a lot of you guys are sizing up a model before you make a purchase decision. And that's part of the reason why you come to Brian Phillips RC, so you can make a good decision and see if it's everything you think it's going to be. And we're not afraid of giving you bad news because we do it all the time. It's just more a matter of, we think sometimes you gotta work harder to squeeze the value out of some planes than other planes. And the real garbage we've really largely stopped reviewing on this channel because we don't wanna waste your time and we don't wanna waste our time. And at the end of the day, FMS has been very good to work with. We've been extremely satisfied with the planes. We work with a variety of different brands, manufacturers, distributors, hobby shops, and this sort of thing. And we wanna make sure that we're bringing you the very best on Brian Phillips RC. So we hope you guys agree, and definitely hope you'll come back to see even more amazing flight footage, reviews, and all that fun stuff here on Brian Phillips RC. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to smash that like button on the way out, and we hope to see you flying soon.